Good evening, you're watching the main news on ATV. I'm Belinda Lloyd.
And I'm Heyling Chan. Here are tonight's top stories.
Buyers of units in Cheung Kong's controversial hotel sale to get back their money totaling $1.4 billion.
City's top court gives transsexual woman right to marry her boyfriend in landmark ruling.
LegCo president's decision to end budget debate tomorrow angers pan-Democrats, prompting one lawmaker to walk out. Cheung Kong is returning nearly $1.5 billion to buyers who took part in the controversial sale of units in its hotel project, the Apex Horizon in Kwai Chung.
The decision comes after an investigation by the Securities and Futures Commission found that the developers should have sought approval for the sale. The Apex Horizon development in Kwai Chung was the source of much controversy in February, when property giant Cheung Kong sold units as hotel rooms rather than private residential flats. Now it's made a U-turn. The developer announced today that it'll refund buyers of all 360 units sold for a total of $1.4 billion. The decision came after the Securities and Futures Commission investigated the matter and found that the sales appear to constitute a collective investment scheme that needed its approval, which was never sought.
Anyone who operates these schemes without the consent or authorization of the SFC could find themselves acting in contravention of the Securities and Futures Commission, which may carry with it quite serious consequences.
Cheung Kong still insists that it doesn't think it broke any SFC rules, but will scrap the sale to avoid future legal disputes. The developer said that it'll return everything that buyers have paid, on top of interest and $10,000 to cover legal fees. But even then, the controversy may not be over, especially if buyers insist on getting a unit they purchased.
If they want to insist to buy in the hotel room, then it's up to them to apply for a mandatory injunction so that the Cheung Kong should actually sell the room to them. However, the Cheung Kong may have the difficulty of fulfilling the relevant collective investment scheme provision in the Securities and Futures Ordinance.
The property giant initially told buyers that its hotel rooms can be used as residential units, but officials say this isn't allowed. Cheung Kong was accused of selling the suites as commercial units for buyers to lease back to themselves to help them escape a buyer's stamp duty. The tax was introduced to stamp out speculation that was driving up residential property prices.
The city's highest court has given a transsexual woman the green light to marry her boyfriend in a ruling that's been hailed as a victory for the rights of sexual minorities.
The court declared that the woman should have the same rights as other women in Hong Kong and gave the government 1 year to rewrite marriage laws, which the judges deemed to be unconstitutional. ATV's Arthur Keeler reports.
Moments after the Court of Final Appeal handed down its landmark ruling, the transsexual woman, identified only as W, issued a statement that was read out by her lawyer.
I may have been born a man, but after transgender surgery in a government hospital more than 5 years ago, I've lived my life as a woman and been treated as a woman in all respects, except as regards my right to marry. This decision rights that wrong. And I'm very happy that the Court of Appeal now recognises my desire to marry my boyfriend one day.
W, who's 37, had sought to overturn earlier rulings by 2 courts that marriage in the city is only allowed between couples who are born of the opposite sex. The marriage registry rejected her request because her birth certificate still classified her as male, and same-sex marriage is not legal here. The woman had argued that the government subsidized her sex change, and her identity card now stated she was a female, so marriage laws could and should recognize that a person's sexual identity could change. 4 of the 5 judges said the nature of marriage as a social institution has undergone far-reaching changes, and the importance of procreation has diminished. They also noted that the absence of a consensus among most Hong Kong people on a transsexual's right to marry is not a relevant consideration for a minority's claim. The judges said the constitutional right to marry extends to the right of a post-operative transsexual. Permanent Judge Patrick Chan, who dissented, said a radical change in the traditional concept of marriage should only be made after public consultation. Although W has been given the nod to marry her boyfriend, the ruling has been suspended for 12 months, so the government can amend the marriage ordinance to recognize transgender women.
It is given respect to the to the legislature by suspending the determination to allow the legislature to bring the ordinances, the marriage ordinance in effect, in line with the decision.
But Vidler stressed that the case has no bearing on the outcome of the fight for same-sex marriage in the city.
This is a gender identity case, not a sexual orientation case. Please note the difference. W is not gay, all right? She is a person who was born a man but lived until her surgery a hellish life of someone who considered that they had the body inconsistent with their own gender. That has been corrected. The law has been corrected in all regards, except as to marriage, up until today. And today, that wrong has been righted.
Speaking to the media by telephone this afternoon, W said she will start preparing for her wedding. She added that she hopes the ruling will help end discrimination against transsexuals in Hong Kong, and she urged the government to introduce laws to protect them. The Equal Opportunities Commission welcomed the judgment, saying transgender individuals have the right to participate in every aspect of life, including the right to marry the person they love. But it pointed out that the transgender community still faces enormous social pressures and called on the government to take prompt action to resolve the problem. Arthur Urquiola, ATV News.
LegCo President Zhang Yuxing has ordered that a marathon debate on the budget bill end tomorrow, killing a filibuster by 4 radical lawmakers.
Zhang defended his decision as appropriate and legitimate, but radical legislators described the move as outrageous and a blatant abuse of powers. Pan-Democrats had suspected that a filibuster against the budget bill would eventually be cut short, as officials recently stepped up their warnings of serious consequences if the debate continued to drag on. This morning, LegCo President Zhang Yuxing adjourned the marathon debate shortly after it resumed and met legislators behind closed doors in their dining room. 2 hours later, Zhang emerged to announce his decision to kill the filibuster by merging debates on the more than 700 remaining amendments to the bill into just a single session that would end by 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. He defended his controversial decision, stressing that it's appropriate and legitimate. Zhang added that the legislature has a responsibility to scrutinize and vote on the budget bill within a reasonable time, pointing out that the debate had already dragged on for more than 3 weeks. The 4 radical pan-Democrat lawmakers behind the filibuster had introduced 710 amendments to the bill in a bid to force the government to introduce a universal pension scheme. One of them, People Power's Albert Chan, branded Zhang's decision as outrageous and a blatant abuse of his powers as LegCo president.
That is a violation of basic councillors' right to speak, because it's quite clear if he stopped all the debate by tomorrow, many of the councillors will not have any opportunity to present their views on some of the amendments, and this is the first time in the council, that such drastic measures have been taken by the president, and it changed the nature of the council, and the councillors' rights have been seriously violated, and we believe it is a serious mistake that the president had made.
Chan did not rule out seeking a judicial review of the decision.
If I have made any decision outside my power, then of course anyone, especially my colleagues in the council, can go for judicial review.
Civic Party lawmaker Claudia Mo accused Zhang of further weakening LegCo's role as a check and balance to the executive and walked out in protest.
For 2 whole hours, we argued the pros and cons of cutting the filibuster. And at almost, the timing is almost perfect. At around 11 o'clock, the president said, I have the following suggestion. When it's so clear, his suggestion is actually his decision. And the whole thing's just a phony consultation. It's just a facade to give the impression that he has consulted the legislators on this issue. And I actually felt being played around on this issue.
Another People Power legislator, Raymond Wong, denounced Zhang, saying he had no shame. The outburst led to the radical lawmaker being evicted from the chamber.
Well, Chief Secretary Carrie Lam and pro-establishment lawmakers welcomed the LegCo president's decision to cut short the filibuster on the budget bill debate.
But the Pan Democrats warned that Zhang Yot-sing's move sets a dangerous precedent and gave the impression that he's backing the government. Chief Secretary Carrie Lam was among a number of officials who repeatedly warned that funding for public services would be at stake if the ongoing filibuster against its budget continued. But now that the stalling tactic will come to an abrupt end tomorrow, Lam breathed a sigh of relief today. Although she welcomed LegCo President Zhang Yot-sing's decision to cut short the filibuster, she still urged the four lawmakers behind the delaying strategy to drop all the amendments they have put forward so that lawmakers could go straight to voting on the bill itself. In his blog, Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying also talked about the filibuster, noting that some people came up to him while he was shopping for flowers yesterday, urging an end to the budget bill delay. The LegCo president also won the backing of pro-establishment lawmakers.
Filibustering is not a constitutional right. It is for the president to make his decision as to ensure the law and order of the discussion and debate of the Legislative Council.
As a Legislative Council president, he has the responsibility, but also the authority to do what he thinks necessary according to the basic law and according to the rules of procedure of the Legislative Council.
But the Pan Democrats suspect that Zhang's decision was based on political motives.
He gives a very strong impression that he is not acting independently and with integrity, as is expected of the President of the Legislative Council. And what he's doing is he's giving the impression that he's fitting in with the agenda of the administration. This is not something he should consider. Being the head of LegCo, he should be very independent and objective and exercise his power accordingly. But we feel that he has abused his power. And in so doing, this could be a very, very serious and bad precedent.
Civic Party lawmaker Alan Leung fears this would not be the last time the LegCo president would adopt such a tactic, adding that he may be tempted to use the same approach when dealing with a filibuster on sensitive issues like the introduction of national security legislation. Last year, Zhang triggered a major outcry when he killed a filibuster for the first time during the by-election bill debate. The High Court has rejected a bid by TVB for a judicial review of the Communications Authority's recommendation to grant 3 new free-to-air television licenses.
The broadcaster expressed regret over the decision and may consider going to the Court of Appeal. ATV's Emily Sue reports.
The debate over whether Hong Kong has room for more free-to-air TV channels looks set to continue. Today, the High Court rejected TVB's bid for a judicial review of the Communications Authority's recommendation to the Chief Executive and Council to grant 3 new free-to-air licenses. Judge Thomas Au said the Executive Council has yet to make a decision, and the authority's recommendation is only advisory in nature. At this stage, he said, TVB simply cannot show its interest has been seriously affected or prejudiced. Au said the broadcaster is entitled to take its complaints to EXCO before it makes a decision. TVB applied for the judicial review in January, claiming that the Communications Authority made an unlawful recommendation in July 2011 when it supported license applications from 3 companies. The station claimed that reports commissioned by the authority before and after the recommendation were full of errors. In a statement issued this evening, TVB expressed regret over the court ruling. The station may take its case to the Court of Appeal after seeking legal advice. In March last year, ATV, the city's other free-to-air broadcaster, failed in its attempt for a judicial challenge. Emily Sue, ATV News.
Still to come on ATV's main news tonight, ethnic Tibetans and Han Chinese workers clash in Beijing in footage captured by Ai Weiwei.
And Tiger Woods clinches 4th title of the year with victory in the Players' Championship.
Current events, controversial issues, In-depth accounts of the latest news and happenings that impact us all. Get to the heart of the matter. Get real with Inside Story, Tuesday night at 6:55.
He was just an unknown maverick agent. Unexpectedly, he was the spy of the century.